Folks, welcome back to another episode of the Pick Up and Play podcast. My name is DJ Switch, and today I've got a very special guest, a man who's actually putting together a camp to teach kids how to make video game music. He's doing it through his organization, the Electronic Music Club. His name's Erik, and he's also a local musician with a band, and we are going to talk about all of that. Of course, I've got to give a big thank you and shout out to my sponsors, Vault 31 Bar, as well as my friends at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo for helping to make this show happen. And I'm going to just cut it short and sweet this time around with the intro. Let's jump right into my interview with Erik from Electronic Music Club. Thank you so much for hanging out today on the show. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because I really, really dig what you're doing over there. And you're setting up a space. Let me get this right. You're setting up a music production space in a mall.
Yep.
Okay. So I got to ask you about this. But before we get into all of that, let me ask you something real quick. Because are you familiar with the couple of guys on TikTok that are doing basically the same kind of thing, but over in Utah?
No.
Have you seen that? Okay.
No, I haven't.
Sorry, my phone's doing something weird. I'm trying to pull this up so I can reference it. Okay, here we go. So the app, the TikTok account is trendingaudio.com.
Okay.
At trendingaudio.com. And these guys they're running a recording studio in a mall right next to a JCPenney in Provo, Utah. And if you watch any of their videos, I don't know, I stumbled on their videos like a little while back. And what's funny is when I found out about what you were doing, it immediately reminded me of their TikTok channel. I was like, I wonder if y'all like know each other.
No.
Because everyone in music knows each other, right? That's how that works.
There is weirdly it is a true 6 degrees of separation. You're like,
it can be, yeah.
We've toured in that city, something like that.
But watching their stuff, they talk about like how malls are looking for alternative types of businesses to help sort of like support and supplement the space and the cost of a big space like a mall. Totally. In 2024. So like, can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Lloyd Center and how you ended up deciding to set up shop in a mall?
Yeah, totally. It was kind of by accident and then a little serendipity later. But I last summer was running a summer camp out of a church basement because we. I know it's so funny to like talk about the history of places that we've been because they're so they're so liminal. I suppose they're like those liminal space Instagram accounts you can follow. But
gotta get in where you fit in, man.
But
whatever.
The church was kind of charging us kind of a lot for what I felt like we were getting. And then I don't know, I got like a wild hair at my ass one day and was like, I'm just going to walk through the Lloyd Center and see what sort of spaces are still even there. And while I just actually ran into somebody I knew who was renting out a space at the Lloyd Center. And they were kind of like, dude, it's sort of open season here. Like nobody, like if you've got an idea that seems sustainable and kind of interesting, they were sort of down to talk. And I was like, oh, and I sort of let that go for the year. And then in March, we just were planning to do the same camp again at the same church. And the church was going to raise our rent to kind of a ridiculously high number, to the point where I was like, this has to be the kind of money where I could just get a retail space of some sort and set up shop there. And around that time, a friend reached out to me and said he was starting a pinball museum at the Lloyd Center. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't I not think to like that should have been place that I checked number one.
Wait a minute. What's the name of the pinball museum?
It is called Star Tropics Arcade. It is it's like,
no kidding.
Yeah, so he took over the old Spencer's, which is
that's perfect.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty on brand. And then I got into
10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's perfect. He did such a cool job. It's like $8, and then all his machines are on free play.
Jeez.
Yeah, so I started looking at spaces here, and then we ended up taking over what used to be a Zoomies. If you're familiar with the skate shop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
I bought more than my fair share of Vans when I was a kid, man.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I know what's
And
up.
so it's kind of funny just because, we were sort of looking for a spot that would be more of a camp space, but then I had always sort of had a dream of like a brick and mortar shop where we could sort of expand our program a little bit to not just be an after school program, but also kind of like start offering some next steps. So I was just kind of like, shoot, this sort of seems like the space to try it. And even as weird as it is, it was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're, I mean, you obviously the camp is very like youth focused.
Yeah.
But you do have some adult classes. In fact, I think I saw something on your social where you've got like an adult meetup at a bar right now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. There's
what's that about?
Yeah, so there's a brewery down the street called Steeplejack that's in what used to be a beautiful old church, so Portland. I know.
I am sensing a theme here.
I'm not even religious. I don't know. It just kind of keeps happening. I don't know. But yeah, I just sort of thought, I thought it would be so fun to do like an intro to Ableton Live, but do it somewhere that's kind of social. And, it's funny teaching kids. They're so good about just shouting out when they have a question, Yeah. I mean, it can also drive you a little crazy, but really they tell you when they need help. And adults actually don't as much. And it's been kind of, sometimes you drink a beer and suddenly you're a little more willing to sort of raise your hand and say like,
Speak
wait,
up.
So I think it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure off of being the one person that wants to ask a question. And then, I don't know, it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute. Like adults start sharing what they made with each other. And it's just a lot more social and more fun. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that sounds super fun. I think the idea of going mobile and being like, all right, everybody, grab a laptop. We're going to make some EDM over a couple of beers. Like,
totally. Yeah.
I mean, of course that's super Portland, but also like in a really like fun and interesting way. Maybe I'm biased being a DJ, like I've had a career in music. You've had a career in music. So like, there's a little echo chamber stuff going on here, but like I can see a path to where something like that would do really well in this community, especially a community like Portland that is very artistic and very creative and
Totally.
And looking for new and different outlets for that creativity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, you're producing electronic music, but electronic music is such a broad and varied and deep and rich definition. Like you can be producing in the same software, Ableton. I mean, this, but just for folks that are listening at home, you can use the same piece of software, Ableton, to produce dubstep, techno, electro, all the way down to like lo-fi hip hop.
Yeah, totally. We almost like to flip it and say it's more like it's making music electronically. It's not like we're just stuck to making ED. A lot of people show up and they're like, actually, I play folk music, and I'm like, that's fine. We can use the same tool. This isn't like a restrictive kind of thing, but I think part of it was just coming up with the name Electronic Music Club rolled off the tongue so much easier than like recording with your computer club. I don't know. I just, from like a marketing angle, sounded so much easier. But yeah, you can use Ableton for anything you want to record,
Man, that's it's really cool that you guys are taking this really open and sort of welcoming approach, because I know that like production can be very daunting, even in my community where me and my guys are all turntablists and we're used to just sort of playing stuff that's already been made and mixing stuff that's already been made.
Right.
And there's so many guys that I know, not just in Portland, but honestly like internationally in the DJ community, that are just afraid. They're afraid to dive into the production side of things.
Yeah.
Because it can be really daunting and intimidating if you're not sure where to start.
Yeah. And that's what's kind of sweet about a lot of our adult classes is usually we have like 2 or 3 experienced DJs taking the class alongside like parents of some of our kids who are like, our kids are talking so much about this, we want to see what they're, you know, and it's like kind of because you're like, you know, in the same room, you're like, oh my gosh, we've got some people that have like zero music experience, and then some people who are like have like a really wide breadth of knowledge but have never touched a DAW before, you know, and it's kind of cool just to sort of see how everybody first sort of like starts moving around and getting used to it. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to just sort of have that like sort of no judgment starting from point zero, you know, and building up from there, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And that's part of what caught my interest, honestly, was you know, I've been working with a few different folks in a few different corners of the music industry somewhat recently in my career. And you know, the sort of the further I kind of tumble accidentally head over heels down that stairway towards, you know, deeper into the music industry, the more I'm just like, God, I need to be producing. I need to be making something so that I can, you know, at least get a writing credit, or something. You know, I've got you know, I work with an MC that recently got accepted into the Recording Academy.
Oh, no.
I've got, you know, I've got another friend of mine that runs a label out of Seattle, is doing a lot of lo-fi video game music. And so like, the more I sort of realize how connected and how much potentials, you know, some of my friends could offer me if I was able to produce something, the more I'm just like, as a, you know, as a 25 and a half year veteran DJ, who's never actually like gotten too deep into production, I'm sitting here going, you dummy, what? Like, you need to get started on this, you know?
Yeah.
So I want to know a little bit more about like sort of where the idea for this came from, because I know you had, you know, according to your bio on the website, you had some experience from 2008, if I recall, teaching kids how to play piano.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when did you start playing piano, and like, what was your sort of music journey like to get it going from when you were a kid to the point where you were teaching kids?
Yeah. So I played piano since I was in first grade. We had like the school I went to had just like the pluckiest, funnest music teacher ever. And I loved her. She was a Miss America, actually. She was Miss New Jersey 1983.
No kidding.
Yeah, totally. She actually won the talent portion playing something wild, like a Stravinsky something or other. She was actually it's actually a genius, but also looked like a beauty queen too. And
right,
it was just like fun and quirky. And I remember I like went home from like pretty early on in the school year, and I was like, Mom, we need to get lessons with Mrs. Carlson. She also had the same last name as I did, spelled differently, but and she was like, does she teach piano? I'm like, I don't know, I don't care. I like, that's the funnest woman I've ever met. And
little 6-year-old Eric, I don't care. I just want to take lessons from her.
This should have been a cue about me being kind of gay. Is like, I was like, fabulous lady. Like, I want to be her friend. Like, let's just hang out. Like, it was kind of the vibe. But so I ended up taking lessons from her from like 1st to 8th grade. And I really liked piano. I liked her. And then actually she kind of got into production herself too. At a certain point, she bought a CMI Fairlight when I was like, do you know that synth? The like classic Kate Bush, like it's like are you familiar?
It has come up recently.
Okay, cool.
It was weird to hear that, because like I was just having a conversation with somebody about the set that they used on like what like Kate Bush used and a couple
Hounds
of people
11
used,
stuff.
Like,
So she was married to a man who owns like a lot of the rights of the Chuck. I want to make sure it's the right Chuck Jones, like the Merry Melodies and Bugs Bunny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she didn't really like have to teach. She just it was always my memory of it. So yeah,
that's so random. What?
Also, I really did not understand how weird this, or like how lucky this was as a kid. I was just like,
Yeah.
sure,
Jeez.
this lady a few blocks from our school has this stuff. Anyway, so she bought a CMI Fairlight, and I thought it was so cool. And she had it in the same room as her piano that she taught on. And like, I kept asking, like, can we please do that? Like, I want to do that. And she like let me a couple of times after I learned a piece. We would go over to that and like rewrite the piece, but with all the different instruments on it. And like, I thought it was so cool. Like,
Jeez.
so
Wow.
I I ended up, and then I went into high school and I did band, orchestra. I played a bunch of different instruments. I got into college on upright bass, weirdly, and then
Hmm.
I went to University of Oregon for their music technology degree that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and I studied music. It kind of ended up being like a more it ended up being so much more like modern composition. It was like studying like Stockhausen and like I didn't realize what I thought I was going to learn how to mix, and I ended up in like
Right.
music concrete and like 20th century experiment. I don't know. It
Yeah.
wasn't totally not my bag, but it also wasn't like what I expected to be doing.
Right.
So I left, and I actually didn't have very good mixing skills. I was better with like conceptual composition, but like
Right.
I couldn't mix a drum kit, So I started my first job. I just sort of I got a teaching job at a private school, and then I kind of convinced them if they got a piano, I could teach piano at the school. So I just started taking lessons during their aftercare hours, and like all the while I was like in bands and stuff, and I did start teaching myself like Logic and eventually Ableton Live, and I started kind of connecting some of those dots from what I learned in music school with this like weird tech degree, and then the more practical
Right.
like pop music side or EDM side of things. And then I taught for years and years. And in 2017, I had a student I had been teaching for a good long while, and he was kind of on the outs. Like they were sort of done with piano. And he just looked at me. He was like, Eric, I don't want to play piano anymore. I just want to make electronic music. And like, I just felt like I got hit by like a ton of bricks. I was like, why did I not think this would be something that kids would kind of want to know how to do to produce their own music? And I sort of sat with that idea for a while, and it kind of took a lot of like, well, how do I do this? Do I do private lessons? Do I do group lessons? How do I kind of pivot? I didn't quite have an answer. And then I was one of those stories where like the pandemic happened, and I was teaching virtual piano lessons, and I just kind of like hit my wall of I don't really want to do this anymore. Especially I don't want to do it virtually.
Yeah.
And then when I went back into person, I kind of had lost any sort of passion for it. And I was like, this seems like as good as time as ever to try this weird idea that I kind of had like 5 years ago.
You know
And
what's funny is
yeah.
my story's not too far off.
Yeah.
I was a saxophone player as a kid.
Oh, crazy.
And yeah, and I actually ended up joining the local college band. So I joined the Clackamas Community College Band at 16 years old.
Oh, crazy.
As
Wow.
a sophomore in high school.
Dang.
And so by the time I turned 18 and graduated, I walked into that music program and paid for my first year of college with my horn.
Dang.
And after, the first 2 semesters as a music major, I realized very quickly that I was doing a lot of studying of stuff I had zero interest in. And I was definitely heading down a path that was not going to get me paid, because in 2002, no one was hiring saxophone players.
Right.
And so
We were
all
8
the
years from Midnight City. Yeah, totally. There are no cool saxophone solos in pop songs anymore.
Right. I mean, it wasn't really around at that. I mean, it's kind of come back now thanks to YouTube, but like and TikTok, but like at the time it was like really kind of impossible to do anything unless you were like the 0.00001% of players, right?
Right.
Which I knew I wasn't. Like I knew I was good, I wasn't that good. So at the same time I was DJing and doing weddings and private parties and corporate events and stuff. And you know, my band director, my freshman year of high school, had taught me how to run a soundboard, and from then on, I was just heading down the path of being a DJ. And that was like, well, all my friends were working grocery store gigs and working retail jobs. I was working weddings. I was
Yeah.
making, you know, I was making as much in 2 days a week as they were making in, you know, in a month.
Totally.
Sometimes. So like, I just, you know, so I kept going with the DJing thing, and then it was the only thing that ever allowed me to sort of like control my own income, flex my creativity, sort of like not have to be beholden to a lot of bureaucratic nonsense, which sounds really rock and roll until you realize that like it really ain't. You know, the life chooses you, right? You don't choose the
Yeah.
life. And so yeah, that's kind of, it's really funny to hear just how similar our stories are. And one of my past guests and one of my friends here in Portland is actually the president of the board for MagFest. And she was on the show talking about how she came up in school playing the bass trombone. And so like, yeah, so it's like we got into music playing these like not obscure, but like less common instruments, bari sax, bass trombone, upright bass, right?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of like, from there, it was like, all right, well, what do I do next? You know?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that was the
so
thing I remember, like someone said, they're like, if you like leave college knowing how to play the upright bass, you could be a career bass player. It's like, if you go in as like a violinist, you know, even if you're the best violinist at your college, you know, you're
right.
competing with a world of amazing, you know, it's and it's not like the job opportunities for the people with kind of those instruments. It's like, join a symphony and you're like, well, those seats kind of open up when people die, you know, or like retire. It's not like there's just new symphonies popping up left and right.
Well, and that was honestly, that was the part that killed me, was like, you know, you say upright bass to me as like an 18-year-old switch, right? You say upright bass and my brain doesn't think symphony. My brain thinks Living End, a punk band out of Australia, right?
Yeah.
So like, that was kind of the road I wanted to head down anyway. Like, as a horn player, I wanted to join a ska band, or I wanted to do like a Real Big Fish kind of thing back then. And it didn't never really panned out. Meanwhile, the DJing thing was working out. And so I just kind of picked a lane. Right.
Yeah.
Of course, here I am. I just turned 40 and I wish I had my horn back. Like I want to start playing again, but
I know there's sometimes I wish I had better instrumental chops, but you know, that's what actual instrumentalists are for, I suppose, once you're a producer.
Well, and you know, like, and that's the thing, is being a producer. The way I see it is, you know, I don't know if you're like a tabletop RPG player, you play any like Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing.
No, I never had. I the closest I got was I was big into Magic the Gathering through like high school.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm not a big. I totally could be. There's no reason I wouldn't. I'm kind of like an obsessive. Like, if I start a thing, I'm like, new thing. Like, it's kind of the reason I've held off on trying those, because I'm like, I would just have a new black hole of money and time.
So anybody that's played D&D or played Baldur's Gate on, you know, the video game version of D&D, basically, the Bard class is kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And, you know, just a little bit good at everything.
Right.
And I think producers are kind of like, in the real world, that's a producer, right? Like, just good enough at everything, but not like super great at anything.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think there's a real need for that. It's an incredibly important role especially in modern music, because modern music, so much of it is electronically produced. And so like, you know, like the unseemly rent notwithstanding, you are doing the Lord's work, sir.
Bring it full circle.
I've been podcasting too long. Listen, I got more stuff to ask you about, Eric. But we have to take a break. So let me jump out of here. We're gonna hear from our friends of All 31 Bar real quick, and then I have to ask you about this video game music camp that you've got coming up in August. And then I definitely want to talk to you a little bit about your own music project as well. So we'll do that when we come back.
Sounds good.
Folks, this episode has once again been sponsored by my friends at Vault 31 Bar. Just 10 minutes north of the Portland airport, Vault 31 is a video game themed bar built for absolutely everyone who loves gaming and geek culture. They offer an incredible selection of beverages and signature cocktails alongside tons of PC and console games available to play. And if you're hungry, they've got plenty of food available from their kitchen, including house-made pizzas, Smurshburgs, and all kinds of deliciously themed options. Anyone who's caught past episodes of this show knows that Vault 31 is all about inclusivity and wants to make sure that absolutely everyone is welcome. As part of their ongoing efforts to make sure they are a space for all gamers, they recently announced that they've purchased the space next door and will be renovating it into an all-ages coffee bar and lounge space so that even the under 21 folks will find safe harbor here. As if that wasn't enough, Vault 31 hosts all kinds of community events, including mini painting, tournaments, pride events, and is currently the home of my newest monthly lo-fi event, but you'll have to follow myself and Vault 31 on socials to find out more about that. Speaking of socials, you can visit them at vault31bar.com or at Vault31Bar on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and Twitch. Or honestly, just visit them in person. I promise there's no cryopods or vacuum cleaners with a human brain attached. If you know, you know. This place is freaking great. And if you're looking for a space that feels like home away from your nerd cave, Vault 31 is that place for me. Just tell them DJ Switch said hi. With that, let's get back to the show. So a little bit later this year, you have a video game music camp that you're going to be conducting for folks in August. Now, is it a kids camp or is it adults too?
Kids camp. Yeah.
Kids camp.
It's kids camp.
Is there, like, would you say 40 is too old? Definitely. I am definitely asking for a friend.
What's so funny is I kind of came up with this camp idea towards the end of last year. And like the more people I told, they were like, why isn't this just for adults? And I was like, I'll have to do something with it. I totally thought everybody was going to be like, oh yeah, such a slam dunk for kids. But just like everyone was like, I want to do that. I kind of forget that you're 40 as well, right?
Yeah.
Like we're in that golden age of like grew up on Nintendo. So, I mean, you know, it's like the kids who are in school right now, like most parents are kind of like our age who have elementary school children. So like when I say this, I'm like, oh, right. They played Mario when they were, like I don't know. I totally should do an adult video game workshop of some sort, or
I'm uniquely qualified to comment on the age range of the retro gaming community.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say there's no kids there because there are plenty of kids there.
Totally. That was actually one of the things.
There are a lot of not kids there.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of funny. What even made me kind of like lean into this a little bit was being shocked. We had at our after school classes that we do, we're at like 25 Portland schools and we do like a once a week, 1 hour after school. And one of the things we did last year was like a thing I had kind of cooked up where I was sort of teaching kids how to make their own drum racks in Ableton, and they would take a field recorder, and I kind of made like a sound scavenger hunt where I was like, go find a metallic sound, go find a wooden sound, go find this. And then we would
genius.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That is amazing.
Yeah. And then I would have them drag in I had a pre-made MIDI clip of the Super Mario theme. And I was kind of like, if you do this correctly, you'll kind of hear this song. And like, I was trying to not give away that it was the Mario theme, but like every kid knew it, and I was shocked how many kids like were obsessed. They're like, "This is my favorite song ever," and I was like, "That's insane!" Like, and then kids were like, "Can you do the Zelda theme?" And I was like, "Do you mean like the OG one, or like Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom?" And they were like, "The original." And I was like, how are you even playing these? And I forgot that there's kind of there's such a resurgence, and a lot of parents just still have Nintendos and stuff. And yeah, it was wild.
I think I think it's a combination of retro gaming, like the retro side of the gaming community at large has certainly grown over the last, 25 years or
Mm-hmm.
so. And I've talked at length with folks, or in and around that community on this very show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then also, I noticed that VGM specifically, or video game music, for folks that aren't maybe familiar with the acronym,
Mm-hmm.
video game music has been kind of like developing its own little following,
Oh
its own little bubble within the video gaming community.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so much of VGM is retro or nostalgia driven.
Mm-hmm.
And I was literally just talking to Rob from Curaga Records about this on the podcast. He and I were having a conversation about how the reason why so much of VGM is focused on the older games and the older music is because of that nostalgia, and because it sort of like breeds that sort of deeper cultural connection
Mm-hmm.
that then gets reflected in like streams, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
you've got like 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds that are sitting on stream, like hanging out with their friends on stream, and they've got like a remix of the Zelda theme playing in the background, or a remix of the Wii Shop theme, or a remix from like Super Mario 64, which they weren't even born yet, right,
Yeah.
when Super Mario 64 came out, but they know that soundtrack backwards and forwards, A, because it's an amazing soundtrack,
Yeah.
but also B, because that soundtrack gets covered and remixed over and over and over in the VGM space. So
Totally.
are you producing, like, what are you using to produce the VGM stuff? Are you talking about Family Tracker? Are you talking about LSDJ? Like how deep does this rabbit hole go for you and for your kids?
We are going to be using Nano Loop. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's kind of
Yep.
like it's like a 16 step sequencer that has like I think 3 monophonic tracks on it. So we have 6 copies of that. So we're going to be using that. And then we're going to do a little bit of remixing too of kind of similar vein of that project I told you about earlier with the field recording device, but like just doing some straight up remixing, taking the original files and having kids kind of like cut loose and chop some stems and stuff up. And we also want to do a lot of taking a little bit of video of like the original games, like the first level of Mario, and having them like re-soundtrack it and do the Foley for it too, which I think will be really fun, because I think it'll be so awesome to like for them to either program a sound or find a sample or like use their voice to like be like, every time he jumps, you've got to drag this sound and time. So I think there's like a lot. What I kind of did with the whole idea about the video games was, and kind of the whole camp in general, is I was like, kids just learn so much better when something speaks to their interests, and like these are all actual techniques, learning how to Foley video is like, that's a career, like people who do Foley sounds have a really cool, fun job. Same with people who do like mixing and editing. And I think this was I think I got very off track with your question, but
that's all right. That's all right.
We are going deep into 8-bit for sure, and then we're kind of like using that as a little bit of a jumping off point for a few other cool projects too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I love the idea of that, and I especially love the idea of like speaking to their interests to help sort of like open that gateway into like the sort of larger idea of music production.
Yeah.
And especially like incorporating the sound effects and Foley side of things, because not all music production is about like dance floors, and not all of it is about like pop charts, right? Like
Totally.
like a lot of people maybe don't realize that the jump sound, when the sound that one of the Koopas make when you jump on their head, even the coin sound when you pick up a coin in Mario, all of that is notes on a MIDI scale. Like it's just music notes.
Yeah.
The camp itself, what does success look like for that camp? What do you need to make sure that this thing happens again? And how can I and my community in the retro gaming scene, like, how can we help make sure that that happens for you?
I mean, just kind of like, I mean, we're really lucky. We're actually running 3 sessions of it. We had to add a third because the first 2 sold, like we got to our maximum number of kids. I think just like talking about it, I mean, I think I'm already kind of thinking it's a bit of a success. I'm really excited about sort of the projects that we're doing with it. I think it's fun. You know, I think it's just so cool to get to do something creative with music where there isn't, you know, I was going to say on the idea of success, you know, it's so funny being a piano teacher for years. We had recitals and stuff. We had things where we kind of had to put kids on a stage and make them super nervous and uncomfortable. And it was almost like you had to guilt kids into like practicing or caring about their instrument. And the kind of beauty of this camp is like, we're just not doing that. You know, like we're just starting with like, it's success if you come here and have fun and tell your friends about this cool skill that you kind of developed. And, you know, I think that's kind of it, honestly. I just, I like the idea of having this camp where there isn't sort of this huge barrier to entry with how to be creative. And we're not telling you what to make necessarily, so long as it's in this kind of like context of 8-bit sounds and video game related stuff. So, yeah.
Let me ask you kind of a strange question, and based on your answer, I'll tell you where I'm going with this.
Okay.
I know it sounds weird, but work with me here. How deep is this camp gonna go? Are you expecting kids to be able to produce a full song by the time this is over?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, we grease the wheels a little bit with this. We have a lot of what we kind of will do sometimes is use like almost like templates or something where we're kind of like, we've been able to draw out in Ableton, like add your bass sound here, drop your bass sound here. So we kind of take a little bit of the guesswork of like, what are the components of a song and what does the length and like journey have to kind of look like? But totally, yeah, we are expecting them to kind of make a song. I mean, we won't be like mad if they don't, but I think we've kind of be able to.
So that gets me thinking, you know, because you were talking about recitals is kind of the typical thing for like the old school days of piano teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, as a horn player, it was kind of the same thing. Like you study a piece for a couple months and then you go perform it in front of a room of like 12 people.
Yeah.
And then
and then you make a mistake you've never made before.
Right.
Yeah.
For months you nailed it. And then you're on stage at the thing and it's all of a sudden your reed doesn't want to do what it's supposed to. I'm curious though, if ever I've seen a sort of answer to that in the electronic space, it's competition. So what do you think about, you know, taking some of the more completed projects and encouraging them to enter a competition for like and have a panel of adjudicators that way and you know, name a winner, you know, not unlike you know, like a jazz festival that I used to perform at all the time or something like that.
I don't know. I think it wouldn't be the worst thing. I don't know. I get a little nervous with the whole concept of it as competition. I mean, I know there's just a certain way that the world works with production and, you know, in a whole like, if you zoom out a little bit, it's like, well, as much as we don't like to say the music business is kind of a gigantic competition if you think about it, but I don't know. I think what I would like is a way to showcase what the kids make in kind of a way that doesn't seem like I mean, they're children. I don't want to be predatory. I'm not trying to like be like check out our newest video game music stars, you know, like
this is Star Search and,
exactly.
We're going to sign your kid up for a contract he can't even read or understand.
Exactly. So I mean, I don't know. I think the thing that I would maybe answer that with is that I think what's kind of fun with this is like, and especially working with kids is, and something creative is like, there's just always that impulse to share what you just made. And like, I think if we had like a more sophisticated opportunity for kids to kind of show that stuff off, that might be kind of cool. Competition, I don't know, maybe it could spur on something kind of fun. And maybe there's always kind of, it's nice sometimes when you sort of when you're kind of like compelled to make work. Sometimes I feel like as a producer, I'll be like, it's been like a week and I haven't touched my computer to like make something. Whereas like somebody will be like, if someone asks me for something, suddenly I have like 20 ideas. Sometimes kind of having a little bit of like, having a little bit of some guidelines or a little bit of a looming deadline kind of suddenly like gets your creative juices flowing, I suppose.
Creative procrastination. I don't know
Exactly.
anything about that. I would never in my life procrastinate on something creatively. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, this is the first, I think you just coined the term creative procrastination.
I promise you I didn't.
No.
Yeah. or if I did, I took way too long to own it and somebody else has already claimed it. Like a true procrastinator. So I gotta ask you because we're coming up on time here.
Okay.
But before we get out of here, I gotta know a little bit about Double Plus Good. I know you started the band a while ago, and I say band. Was it solo at first, or do you actually have other members now? Like, how's it?
Yeah, I started playing out at kind of like a fun time when it sort of seemed like there were a lot of like one man bands where like music production had kind of broken into the like indie sphere. There were bands like, I really liked this guy, which also now is a band called Yacht, who's also from Portland. And there were a few other people sort of in the same vein where they kind of like played stuff off of a bunch of drum machines and then would sing along with it. And it wasn't quite pop and it wasn't quite experimental. It was sort of somewhere in between, but it sort of leaned accessible. And that's kind of where I started. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, I sort of like have followed my nose with it over the years, and just sort of what I wanted to make, I just do that under the banner, because it started really like quirky, and then I kind of had an album that leaned really hard into like 80s production territory. And then my most recent one was almost more like a throwback Roy Orbison style thing, which is
okay.
So, I mean, it's a little all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely checked out some of it on Spotify.
Cool.
And I can kind of hear what you're talking about. There's like a range of different sort of style ideas being presented. I think it's, having grown up not only studying rock and roll history in college, but also like just being a DJ and having to sort of like, be focused in on my, the roots of DJ culture and the roots of, hip hop and disco and funk and all that. Obviously Sly and the Family Stone comes to mind. And so like, much like Sly, it sounds like one of those groups that like sometimes has one member, sometimes has 8. And it's just kind of a whatever is required to get the project done, but you're at the center of the whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's kind of been it. And I mean, that said, the current lineup of people that play in Double Plus Good has been the same since like 2017 now. So it feels like it's kind of in its most like leveled out. Like, these are the people that make it up. I don't know if I'm going to reinvent the band again, but I mean, we also are kind of, we're in a good spot with this band because it's like everybody sort of knows a little bit about every other's. Like, my drummer is also a really great producer. My guitarist is also a really great drummer. Our bass player is just like super knowledgeable about all things. He's just like a mega music nerd. And so in the past, I feel like sometimes I've had people who I'm like, they're exactly a drummer. There's not like, something outside of their range. So it's kind of fun because it does make the ability to sort of like shift our genre a little bit a lot easier, because it's like, oh, well, are we going to be like New Order today? Or are we going to be, like the Smiths, or, So something about it, it works really well. We have a good dynamic. So
I'm imagining a like a choose your own adventure style thing from the stage where you have the crowd like an improv game. You just have the crowd shout out a genre,
oh
and
my
then
god,
you
that's
have
getting
to
too close to like comedy sports or something like that.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's a yeah. Just a whole band full of Wayne Brady's. Just
Yeah,
all.
Jesus Christ. It'd be fun. I
Listen,
mean, I don't want to
no
be
pressure, no
here.
pressure. That's well, listen, Eric, I really, really appreciate you coming on today, man.
Thank you. Yeah, this has
This
been
was so
fun.
super fun. Where can folks find out more about you? Where can folks find out more about the Electronic Music Club?
Yeah, so Electronic Music Club, you can find out about that at our webpage. It is electronicmusicclub.net. And we're on all the socials too, and some variation of that same name. Instagram's our most kind of common. It's Electronic Music Club with underscores between the words. And then about Double Plus Good, we've got our biggest follow, our kind of thing that we update the most is Double Plus Good Band is our Instagram handle, and that's kind of where you can find out more about that and yeah, hear a bit of what we've done. And then we're also on the streaming services as well.
Sweet. Yeah, I was enjoying some stuff on Spotify, so you're definitely there. And I found a little bit on YouTube. Looks like there's been some music videos in your past.
Yeah, the YouTube rabbit hole's weird. It's
listen, same here. I've done tech reviews. I've done DJ reviews for other channels. I've done I was doing like music reaction stuff for a little while.
Cool.
Which went really well until it didn't. Yeah, that's another story for another time. So like YouTube's just a weird place, and it's fun to kind of experiment and try stuff and see sort of what sticks. Right now, obviously, I've got the podcast that you all at home are listening to / watching. But I also have on my channel, I just recently started a series called Never Have I Ever. And I'm doing Never Have I Ever Played Minecraft is my first game that I'm playing. As it's like a gaming series, but it's Never Have I Ever Played insert game here. And Minecraft was a big one that I'd never touched before.
I still haven't. I know that I have to like sort of study up on that one before I have a bunch of kids in here telling me everything they know about Minecraft.
I have good news for you. If you want to watch a DJ schmuck his way through trying to figure out how to play that game, I've got a couple videos that are right up your alley. I get nowhere with it, and had a great time in the process. So,
well, that's good to
hear. Well, listen, Eric, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, it's a hoot. Love it.
A massive thank you to Eric from Electronic Music Club for hanging out with me today and telling me all about his video game music camp for kids, as well as a little bit about his band. Y'all, I am so excited for this camp. I am looking forward to finding out more about what Erik and his organization has to offer. A lot of folks may not know this about me, but I've been really dying to get into production and learn more about that side of music because I've got some opportunities that I have not yet been able to really pursue because I need to get my production chops up. So part of the reason why I wanted to have Erik on this show is so I could find out more about the Electronic Music Club and show you folks a little bit more about what he's got going on over at the new space in Lloyd Center. So unfortunately, we couldn't have a tour this time around, but I am definitely looking forward to seeing what it looks like when it's all finished and they actually open up to the public for the first time. And that should be coming very, very soon. So make sure you follow Electronic Music Club in Portland on all of the socials. And of course, as always, I would greatly appreciate it if you had subscribed to this channel. If you haven't already, it is massively helpful. And, I've been dealing with a lot of sort of old subscribers that have been falling off of the channel. And so subscribing, if you're enjoying this show, or if you're enjoying my new Never Have I Ever gaming series, it would be a huge, huge help to me because I need to be pushing back against the subscribers that have been falling off. And, I can only do that with your help. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. I will see you on the next one. I like to think of it as more like a video game culture show. Like,
sure, yeah.
Because I'm not playing video games on the show.
Right, yeah.
And,
about how it's like culture through the lens of video games.
Right. And the thing is, like, when I'm playing at the Retro Gaming Expo, I'm sort of thinking through the same lens of like people who like video games like other shit too.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like, so like I'm gonna lean into the other stuff people like. Technically, Weird Al has very few songs about video games, but I could play any of his shit at a video game event and it goes off, right?
Yeah,
so
totally,
like,
yeah.
So like that,
There's
and that's
got diagram share of Weird Al and video game appreciation.
Right? Yeah,
yeah.
Like I definitely play Pinball Wizard at the expo, but the Who has other songs that gamers like to listen to also that aren't about pinball.
Right. Totally.
And then don't get me started on Rush. That's
whoa, weird. Okay, but that makes sense.
No, don't get me wrong. Nothing against Rush, ever. One of my favorite bands of all time. Incredible talents, all three of them. For almost a decade, I couldn't get through a year at the expo without somebody coming up and being like, "Yo, man, play 2112. What song? All of it." No,
just start to finish the whole.
I'm not putting this whole hall through 45 minutes of nothing but Rush. Like I'm not going to do that to these people.
That's the funniest DJ move to just play a full LP. Like,
so if I told you that I've never just put on the B side of Abbey Road and walked away from my turntable on a live hall floor, I'd be lying.
I mean, crowd pleaser,
I've done it. At the expo, listen, you get to like 25 hours in at the expo and one of your DJs is like called off sick, so you've got to fill the extra couple hours. Like, you start scraping through the record collection.
Sure, yeah.
All right, man, you want to get in to the second half?
Yeah,
right.
That sounds great.